USA Insulation, 513-381-3626, 513-381-FOAM. USA Insulation.
55 KRC on demand. Hear Brian Thomas weekdays 5 till 9 a.m. on 55 KRC, the talk station.
$8:05. Well, click. 8:06, 55 KRC, the talk station. Very happy Tuesday to you. Brian Thomas here. And in case you haven't noticed, we have issue 2 on the ballot coming up for Ohio. Issue 2 relating to unions and some curbs to the unions' very broad power. And on the telephone, State Senator Shannon Jones back on the program to help us get a better understanding of exactly what issue 2 is. Welcome back to the program, State Senator Shannon Jones.
Good morning.
This is my second time talking with someone who is in favor of issue 2. If you vote yes on issue 2, you are voting to support or keep the legislation that was passed. That's Senate Bill 5, correct?
That's correct.
I know. Sometimes these things are confusing, and oftentimes, as you know, Senator Jones, many times the average guy like me thinks that they were written to be intentionally confusing, so you have no idea what you're voting for when you go in.
Yeah, it is confusing, but we've always known that this is a campaign about education anyway, and so we're trying to do as much as we can to educate people about the reasonable reforms in issue 2, and that if people support those reasonable reforms, they need to vote yes on issue 2.
Excellent. And one of the places where you can find all the issues, the myth versus fact, is betterohio.org. There's a myth versus fact section there. And, of course, talking to folks like you, Senator Jones, let me ask you this. You've been around SB 5 from the outset. I believe you helped to draft it. You have certainly pushed it. You were in on meetings, and you helped get it passed. Is that all accurate?
That's correct.
All right. Let me ask you this. When after it was passed and from that point on till now, and I know there's been television commercials running, what is the biggest lie that you see? What's the one that just makes you, Senator Jones, want to pull your hair out when you hear it or see it on television?
Well, if I had to pick just one, it would be that our safety forces wouldn't be able to bargain for their safety equipment, which is absolutely false.
Okay, and what if it's false? And from my reading of everything, Senator Jones, it is false. How can they get, and upon what do they predicate that claim? Is it just an outright, sphincter-inspired fabrication, or is it based on something written in SB 5?
Listen, I can't speak to the motivations of those who are putting out the falsehoods. All I can say is issue 2 is pretty straightforward, and what it says is our public employees are still going to be able to collectively bargain for wages, hours, terms, and conditions, which is what the current law is. We've added an additional provision that says specifically our safety forces can negotiate for safety equipment, but it puts some guardrails around those negotiations, like asking our public employees to pay a mere 15% towards their own health care insurance when the average Ohioan in the private sector pays 31%. We think that's fair and reasonable. Issue 2 is asking our public employees to pay their share, that is 10%, to their own pension, while the taxpayer contributes an additional 14% towards that employee's pension. These are sort of reasonable reforms that are set not to disrespect the public employees, but rather to do something that's fair and reasonable that we can afford, that frankly respects the taxpayers.
Let me ask you, I guess I am hearing that. I agree with you completely. I'm in favor of SB 5, and I'm hearing the words echo in my head from, I don't know, the last time I talked on this issue. Well, we negotiated, though. There was nothing illegal about our negotiations. The fact that we don't pay 15% and you, the private sector folks, pay 30%. Or the fact that, I don't pay, as much as you do for health is, we negotiated that. It was arm's length, one side of the table versus the other. So how is it wrong, and what's wrong with what happened?
Well, look, we can talk about the mistakes that have been made in the past, or we could put ourselves on a pathway to sustainable contracts in the future. But here's the fact. The existing law was set up that for every time you go to the table, while you say it's an arm's length negotiation, it's the previous contract becomes the floor of the next negotiation. So once things go into contracts, they can't come back out. So let me give you an example. At a time over the decades when perhaps we had public employers who didn't have money to give in raises, they would give things like excessive vacation or sick days or other paid personal days. Well, what's happened over time is that there's been no guardrails on that. And there have been huge payouts for accumulated time. So what's, issue 2 does, when I talk about guardrails, it's limiting that kind of accrual of time. Now, our public employees are still going to be able to negotiate up to 6 weeks of paid vacation, up to 2 weeks of paid sick time, up to 3 days of paid personal day. And they're still going to be able to accrue that through their career and get paid out up to 25 weeks of time upon their retirement. Now, no other private sector employee that I know of gets those sorts of benefits. That's still going to be preserved for them in issue 2, but instead of having an unlimited amount, it's putting some guardrails on it.
Okay, and I understand the reasons. The problem, I suppose, is because the state of Ohio itself is short on cash, and every municipality practically and every county in the entire state is short on cash, and there's not a whole bunch of cash coming in until we right the economic ship of the state of Ohio. We're going to continue to be short on cash.
That's right. The
Now,
city of Cincinnati, you may recall, just this year paid out $93 million in unused sick time and vacation time for retiring employees. That's about 25% of their entire budget.
Right.
These cities can't afford it.
And I know that this is the problem we run into, but I guess I have to play on that point devil's advocate that was a benefit that was promised, and I guess it would have been paid out had they not been able to accrue vacation and sick time and keep it till the end of their career and then collect. We would have had to pay that real time during the years in which the vacation time was offered, correct?
Well, sure, but now it's compounds itself year after year. So when we talk about guardrails again, we're limiting the amount that they can accrue and the amount that they can get paid out.
Gotcha.
And what happens is that, if you have a 30-year career and you start accumulating sick time, now this isn't vacation time, sick time from your first year. When you retire 30 years later, you're getting that sick time paid out at your highest rate of pay.
Yep.
Not as you've earned it in the early years. And so, there's just a reason why we need to bend that cost curve. So it's still very generous, much better than what they can get in the private sector. And when we see the kinds of research that's been coming out from the American Enterprise Institute, for example, just did a study of Ohio specific, released it last month, that said, in comparison to from our private sector employees in Ohio to our public sector employees, it's true that our public sector employees, when you compare base salary for equal education and equal jobs, are paid 2.5% less on base salary. But when you factor in pensions, robust health care, and so forth, that moves to 33% more. Our public employees make 33% more than the private sector counterpart. Then when you add into that job security, the fact that our public sector employees enjoy much better job security through tenure and seniority, that moves to 43%. So, the private sector employees of equal experience, equal jobs, equal education are making 43% less than those that they're paying for in the public sector. We can't sustain that.
No, it is unsustainable. I think I don't know anybody who could disagree with that. I mean, the unions, the folks opposed to SB 5 that want you to vote no on issue 2, claim that we can maintain the status quo, but I never hear an answer from them on exactly how that's going to be brought about, Shannon, or State Senator Shannon Jones. Let me ask you this, though, because as you were speaking on that topic and job security, I wrote down the words Camden, New Jersey, where they had to fire half of the police department because they would not negotiate on terms and conditions. Is that not the reality? If you do not vote yes on issue 2, SB 5 gets shot down, status quo gets maintained, all of the municipalities, city of Cincinnati included, are still broke, have no room to negotiate, and therefore will have to fire, correct?
That's exactly right.
So where's the brotherhood there? Where's the union collective the group hug that they always purport to they don't care about the newest guy in the door, do they?
Yeah, it's a system that's insidious because it doesn't factor in. It doesn't allow us to factor in if these cities and school districts and so forth are forced into layoff situations. It doesn't factor in one's performance. So you have situations like the Pickerington School District where they had to lay off because of budget cuts 5 of their teachers of the year because they didn't have the seniority that other teachers who weren't rated as highly had. If we're going to have these situations where cities and school districts are faced with fewer and fewer revenues, we have to give them more flexibility on how they're going to deal with it over the long term. Or else, we're going to be forced to either have massive tax increases, which people don't want and are not going to support, massive layoffs, which we're seeing, not just in Ohio, but around the country, this is happening, as you point out, or we're going to see an elimination of services where the city of Toledo, for example, because of their contracts, they eliminated their entire street repaving program. Now, the people in Toledo who are paying their taxes probably believe that they're paying their taxes to have their streets repaved, but they can no longer afford that.
I saw one city, and for the life of me, I thought you were getting ready to launch into this particular example. I thought it was Toledo. Maybe it was someplace else. They suspended domestic violence prosecutions because of being out of money.
Yeah, I had not seen that, but I can tell you this: almost every week you can read in one of the newspapers around this state situations just like that, example after example after example. I mean, the city of Massillon, they've not been able to pay their bills since May, and not one single one of their employees pays a dime to their health insurance premium. You have a city that's bankrupt, and no employees are paying for a piece of their health insurance. It's just not sustainable.
And it just seems to getting worse. All the economic indicators and reports we get, it's spiraling out of control. The fear that we have, the uncertainty that it has is making people tighten up even more, which is reducing the overall tax base, which is compounding an already terrible problem.
Right.
Vote
well,
yes.
And here, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, so the solution to at least part of the budget situations is to vote yes. Now, will that automatically change things? Will there be immediate? This gets approved. Is there going to be an immediate, increase in the amount of premiums the unions pay, or the health care premium, or is this something that's going to have to be dealt with by each municipality?
It's dealt with on an individual municipality basis, and what will happen is the existing contract that they're under will continue to run until it expires. But once then they enter into new contracts, it has to be done under the guardrail terms saying 15% towards health care, 10% towards their own pension, and the constraints on the generous leave policies. And so, it's going to be some time before it's fully felt. But, here's what I know. After November 8th, regardless of what happens with issue 2, I know that our local communities aren't going to have any more money. What's before us right now with issue 2 is we get to decide, do we want to give those people who we elect to manage our cities and schools and townships and villages and counties more tools in their toolbox to manage through this, or do we want to continue to tie their hands and say they can only then raise taxes, eliminate services, and lay off massive amounts of employees? That's what this is about.
Well, it does sound to me like the right choice would be to vote yes on issue 2. I'm already convinced on this, but the education process continues, and I think the more people understand it, the more they'll realize. It sounds to me like for everybody's good, including, heck, a lot of union employees as well.
Yeah, absolutely. This is about jobs. This is about trying to keep as many of our good public employees employed doing the public business as we possibly can.
State Senator Shannon Jones, I appreciate the information today. It's always nice having you on the program. And, well, of course, we're rolling right on to the election. We're going to find out soon enough. We'll continue to pass the word here on the 55 KRC Morning Show.
Thank you.
Have a fantastic week.
Weekdays at 3 and at 55krc.com. Search Listen Live from 55KRC, the talk station.
824, 55 KRC, the talk station. It was nice talking to State Senator Shannon Jones. I'm glad she took time out of her busy schedule to give us a ring and explain some issue 2 information. We'll talk tomorrow with a anti-issue 2 advocate. So we'll get the other side of the story. I try to present both sides of the information, and we'll do that definitely tomorrow. Vote No on Issue 2 group gets their chance to convince you tomorrow at 7:05. He didn't get a chance to listen to my discussion with Louis Sorley. It was at 7:05. He wrote a brand new book called Westmoreland. Apparently, Louis Sorley knows everything there is to know about Vietnam. I'll say nominated for a Pulitzer Prize at one point on a book for Vietnam. But this book, Westmoreland, he is convinced that General Westmoreland, lost the war. It is because of his appointment as being responsible for the forces of Vietnam that we lost. So interesting take on that. I had a fun conversation with him. And then Dana Perino, former White House press secretary, was on at 7:40 to talk about her upcoming battle with Robert Gibbs, also former White House press secretary. They're going to be at the Northern Kentucky University Lecture Series. You can get the tickets and information at 55krc.com. It's all there. And where you can also vote on the pet photo contest. We're taking the votes now for the best. Got great prizes there, and also an opportunity every day here on the morning show to win $1,000. Just listen for your chance to win. We'll do that national call thing, and I appreciate Ryan's Glass stepping up to the plate on that. Phone calls coming up right after this. It's 825, 55 KRC. The
News, weather, and traffic. You need 55 KRC, the talk station.
Just shy of 8:31. 55 KRC, the talk station. A very happy Tuesday to you. Brian Thomas here. The phone number 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone. And before we dive into some more information, I got local stories sitting here. Got all kinds of Occupy Wall Street, Occupy Cincinnati stuff going on, which we've been talking about all morning as well. But we also have SB5. So let's start with Paul. He's been kind enough to stay on hold. He's not real favor of SB5. So tell me about it, Paul. What's on your mind today?
Hi, you had asked how the Brotherhood and all of that's working. The people in the union over this past 2 years have volunteered to take 2-week unpaid furloughs. So we've done that. I haven't heard of any elected official taking any cuts. And all I've seen is that the Senate has increased their salaries above the $100,000 mark.
Well, I don't know that. I tell you what, memorializing that in a contract would work out well. That cut that you've agreed to, that all the union guys stepped up to, if it's year after year after year, you can achieve a savings and actually correct a financial problem that the municipalities have. So doing it one-off, you can't plan on that, though.
We have also, we're already at 15 and 10% as far as our contract goes.
Well, yours.
State of Ohio's budget is balanced.
Wait a second. State of Ohio's budget being balanced does not affect the city of Cincinnati's budget being balanced. Now, your union may take 15% out on a health care or some other percentage, but not all unions do, and not all unions are willing to make that kind of concession. So if you're out in some municipality named, I don't know, we'll call it, Happy Village, and the municipality of Happy Village refuses to entertain the demands of unions, or they have a better bargaining position, you're going to have to pay 15%. Over in the city of Cincinnati, where the unions apparently have a lot of strength with politicians, they've got a much better deal. I don't know politicians can accumulate unpaid vacation time, so attacking politicians on their salary doesn't address one of the primary problems that SB5 helps deal with. So, there's a lot going on here, and one size apparently does not work. Well, the current situation for a lot of municipalities who have succumbed to political pressure just does not work. This is like a smoking ban. You can voluntarily refuse to let people smoke in your establishment. You don't need a law to do that. And maybe your municipality has established its own version of that by putting its foot down and saying, no, union, you must contribute 15% like the rest of the world. Well, the rest of the world actually contributes 30%, but you're going to have to contribute 15. There. They've applied a solution in the collective bargaining process. If you don't like it, I'm sorry. I guess it sucks to be you. But in a lot of other places, well, they're looking for the smoking ban. They can't do it themselves, yet they have a budget problem they have to face. So what they do is they look to Shannon Jones and the folks up in Columbus and they say, dude, we can't fix the problem ourselves. We're flat busted broke. We need a way to negotiate with the unions. Can you do a one-size-fits-all for us, please? Can you take the negotiation process out of it? It's getting a little painful for us. Oh, and parenthetically speaking, we've got a bunch of politicians over here who love giving the unions everything they want because they end up getting back in tenfold terms of campaign contributions and the like. So there's your one-size-fits-all solution. I mean, should it have to be this way? No. Politicians and municipalities should be in a better position to stand up and say no. To stand up and say, mediator, binding arbitrator, or whatever process they ultimately go through, you must take into account the finances of the municipality. We're broke. Under the current situation, without SB 5, they do whatever they want. They split the baby. As everybody always says, the prior contract is the baseline. It's like the federal government. You don't ever go backwards. You only negotiate for more. And that is a system that's unsustainable. Particularly given the fact that we, as the people, elect weak-willed, weak-kneed, corrupt politicians. 835, 55 KRC Talk.
Where money talks. From the Steve Perrin Coordinated Financial Planning Studios, this is 55 KRC, the talk station.
839, 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy Tuesday. Brian Thomas here. Glad to be. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone. Care to call or comment. Little SB5 there with State Senator Shannon Jones. We, of course, have Occupy Wall Street protests still going on all over the place. I'm just going to generically refer to the ones locally as Occupy Wall Street, too, because they all seem to be cut from the same cloth, and they all are acting at the same behest or inspiration, which is just general anger. Disjointed, some want something, some want the other. I had a guy call earlier that claimed that a whole bunch of people downtown were Ron Paul supporters, and I thought, well, they're in the wrong place, but apparently not. If you're angry, you show up, which means it's a disjointed group of people with disparate demands and just generalized anger, and I don't understand that. I don't understand what you hope to accomplish. I tried to find that out last week when I spoke to one of the folks from Occupy Cincinnati, and he didn't even know what he was hoping to accomplish. If you didn't get a chance to hear that podcast at 55krc.com, yeah. I think he did know his name. 749-5500, pound 550 on your AT&T phone, and on the web at 55krc.com, where we're asking the question, before we get to Richard, who is on the line, should balloons and children's party favors be banned? And you think, okay, Thomas, what the hell are you talking about? Well, this, of course, out of the European Union, which provides the impetus and recommendations for many things that the left wants to implement in this country. And, of course, the European Union has issued a safety directive which says balloons must not be blown up by unsupervised children under the age of 8. No balloons for children under the age of 8. Now, if that isn't insulting enough, you know those whistleblower things, the paper horns that you blow on and it rolls out. You know, you think of New Year's Eve and it rolls out. Okay. That seemingly harmless little horn is now classified as unsafe for all children under the age of 14. These rules the EU did to protect children from the unbelievably remote chance that a piece of that whistle could be swallowed and cause choking. Ask yourself, if the whistle malfunctions in a way that they're suggesting, and it would have to. Have you ever seen one of those things? They're like a solid piece of plastic with some paper material or some aluminum material on the end of it. You blow on it. It would be equally harmful for an adult. So why don't they just ban everything on the planet that could even potentially provide harm to you? And beneath that story, and I just went off on a tear because I'm telling you, this rubbed my wife the wrong way. My wife, a nurse as well as a healthcare attorney, she is incensed by the fact that California and their governor just signed yesterday a bill that lets a 12-year-old make the decision the decision on whether or not to get the HPV vaccine. A 12-year-old that in the European Union can't blow a horn, can actually engage in the decision-making process, evaluate the risks and the benefits, and discuss all the ramifications and everything. And do you think be persuaded by the adult medical practitioner in the room that they should or should not get a vaccine? Without any parental involvement, 12 years old. Talk to a 12-year-old. Ask them if they understand about risks. And as I pointed out this morning, I'll say the same thing. Even your most generic, run-of-the-mill, everyday medication, I think of like something like, Lipitor. It's got a whole list of things that are bad for you, potential downsides. And you, hopefully, if you're taking that drug, have evaluated it. And you've talked with your doctor about what to look for in case something goes wrong. A 12-year-old? I'm sorry. That vaccine may be the best thing on the planet, but you can't allow children as young as 12 without any parental involvement to be influenced by those learned folks around them. Richard, thanks for holding. Welcome to the morning show.
Well, in conjunction talking about what you're talking about in the European Union, what the people need there and the kids need there is a piece of food in their mouth. Then worry about them blowing a whistle. Hello, you got all these countries that are bankrupt. How many kids are starving to death? They only have a piece of food in their mouth.
I imagine quite a few of them, Richard, and sadly, I suspect you look at a country like Greece, which is looking like it will have to declare bankruptcy. It's only going to get worse.
On the union thing, I'm forced to be a union member. They've been taken out over a period of years. It amounts to thousands of dollars, which is not given to the Republican Party as a charity. It's stealing out of the Democrat Party. It's stealing out of my pocket. So why don't the next 50 years we give to the Republican Party? But when a bunch of Tea Party people were up in Columbus last year, one of the union officials, the top union official, we said, well, what about all the people who are going to be laid off at this company if we don't make some compromises? He says, it's not about whether the men are working or not. It's about what the union accomplishes.
Thanks, Richard. And you know what? I'm going to go back to Camden, New Jersey, where they fired half the police department. I'm going to go back to every other fiscal reality. Everybody may want to be in a state of denial and put their hands over their ears and close their eyes and go la 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 because they don't want to listen. The fact remains that municipalities across this great land of ours are absolutely fat, busted, broke, and the revenues are declining, not increasing. With the poor economy and more layoffs and fewer people working, the revenues are declining. That is creating has created an unsustainable reality. 845, 55 KRC.
State with the best talk. This is 55 KRC, the talk station.
850, 55 KRC, the talk station. Happy Tuesday. Brian Thomas here, and happy to be. Head on over to the phones. 1 week from tomorrow, we will be going to lunch out and about the Grand Old Pub. Going to make another visit to the Grand Old Pub. Hope you can make it. The information on my blog page, 55krc.com, and I hope to see you there at 11:30 next Wednesday, not tomorrow. To the phones we go. Jay, thank you so much for holding, and welcome to the morning show.
Good morning, Brian. How you doing?
Fantastic. I hope you can say the same.
Oh, absolutely. Hey, I just wanted to add a point of clarification to your words moments ago about the municipalities trying to get help from the state.
Mm-hmm.
This is not a situation where all these municipalities are simply wimps and won't negotiate and they want the state to do something for them. The problem is that the sides are not even. The playing field is not even. Over the years, the laws in the state of Ohio have been set to favor one side. And so we, the taxpayers, by the time we get to the bargaining table, and we're not really directly represented, but by the time we get there, it's the bottom of the ninth, and there's 2 outs, and the pitcher is wound up to throw a screwball. And the idea behind SB 5 and why people should vote yes on issue 2 is to make reasonable reforms to rebalance the playing field so that you can have real negotiations.
Well put. And I didn't mean to just sum up the entire thing as analogous to people just throwing in the towel and said they need someone to ride herd over them in the form of a uniform one-size-fits-all. It just seems to be that way. But you're right. The deck is stacked against the taxpayer in this situation, and the taxpayer's only recourse is with elections. And sadly, this is not the only issue in an election, and people tend to forget that, politicians will end up benefiting the unions over time when other things may have been paramount during an election. So it's an ongoing problem, but I agree with your analysis. I appreciate it. Let's go to Jim, see what Jim's got. Jim, welcome to the morning show.
Morning, how you doing?
Doing well, Jim. What's on your mind today, my friend?
Well, about Occupy Wall Street, and maybe this is an oversimplification of what's happening, but it is a recruitment tool. That is all they're doing. That's why they're neutral. That's why they don't have a major agenda.
Recruitment for what?
Just like the hope and change recruitment for the next election.
Okay, so and so you're in the Nancy Pelosi camp in the sense, not you personally, Jim, but your analysis is that you're going to embrace these people because regardless of what they're down there for, and there seems to be a multitude of reasons in your mind as a politician, they represent voters.
Well, they represent voters, and they also represent a threat to anybody, including Wall Street.
Well,
they can come in and attack.
I guess on a percentage basis, though, you got a real problem on your hands, Jim. And this is something I've been pointing out all morning. The Democrats want to hitch their wagon to this disparate group, which happens to have among its primary targets every bank and Wall Street person on the planet. So that happens to be the source of a whole lot of income for politicians as well. And I think it would be an interesting thing for a bank after being bashed over and over again and then have the people bashing them embraced by the very politicians he used to write checks to. I think it'd be an interesting thing to see if they continue to write checks to those idiots. Second point, if you're a Democrat, do the people on Wall Street occupying it, those people who are jobless and mad about it, have any money to donate to your campaign? Don't think so. And then listen finally to the facts that are going on, for example, in Wall Street. They're getting what they're asking for. Great article by Andrew Grossman analyzing the shrinkage of Wall Street securities and banking and insurance jobs. They've already lost a truckload of them. And with all those jobs, they lost every penny of taxable revenue that went along with them. The people are moving out of New York. These evil bankers, these evil insurance companies, these evil securities jobs. You know what? That whole sector declined by 9% almost. So, guess what? New York's having a bit of a financial problem if you haven't known, and it gets worse each and every day. Because the more you pile up on these evil people, the more you realize that, wait a second. Everything I'm asking for is built on the dollars that those people go out and earn every day. Those evil people going out, making money, and then, oh yeah, I'm taking about half of it in the form of taxes, which perpetuates the nonsense that I want to go around. Go ahead, bring all that down and see how well it serves you. 854.